Hey everyone, and welcome back to AMS Automotive Evolution. So glad to have you with us in what I think is one of our signature sessions of this whole event, looking at sustainability in vehicle production. Sustainability targets and ESG are increasingly embedded into the product and production plans across major manufacturers. Of course, we have the Paris Climate Agreement goals of carbon neutrality by 2050. But many manufacturers, particularly in Europe and North America, have made commitments that go further on the back of COP26 and even those trying to go further than that. Sustainability is, of course, the most important topic for our societies and our future. But it's also important at strategic levels for automotive manufacturers. If we look at the business model of rising costs of, for example, batteries and materials, it becomes increasingly clear that the role of things like circular economy, recycling, will be fundamental to ensuring that vehicles can be made and obviously can be made sustainably and affordable. And of course, as we talked about with many experts yesterday during some of our sessions, sustainability is also an important motivating factor for employees. It gives a sense of purpose. It brings a vision and mission that can align organizations. But of course, those positives and ambitions don't take away from the challenges at hand in terms of securing sustainable energy sources, of adopting manufacturing and sourcing to reduce emissions, looking at things like logistics as well, materials. And again, at a time of rising costs, rising prices, inflation across the economy, across the value chain, it is not an easy ask for suppliers, for consumers, and plants to pay more to secure the future. But securing that future, of course, is necessary, and we can't, it's re-emphasized in everything that we see across the world. So the question for our panel today and for our experts is, what are the tools, processes, technologies that will help get us there? And perhaps most importantly, what are the partnerships that are going to be necessary and that can be created to move towards sustainable production and products across the entire life cycle. I want to bring on our panel, introducing first each of them because they're really the perfect experts to bring this to talk about with you today. Our first expert is leading on Polestar's Lighthouse project to create a carbon-free vehicle across the life cycle, the Polestar Zero. Which is such an exciting project. Can't wait to talk more about it. He joined Polestar in 2018 as CTO, and before that was at Volvo Cars, where he was technical director for a number of electrified products and systems. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pleased to have with us from Gothenburg, Hans Persson. Hans, so great to see you, and of course with that beautiful product in the background as well.
Thank you, Grace.
Also joining from Sweden, actually I should say our entire panel is from Sweden today, although different directions, is the head of Volvo's circular economy business, covering all aspects of operations, including manufacturing and supply chain, ensuring that life cycle is optimized for circularity. Joined Volvo last year and has a large focus on areas like material loops and impacts beyond CO2 and biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome Owen Griffiths from Volvo Cars.
Hi there.
Hi, Owen. Great to have you with us. And finally, also joining us from Stockholm, pleased to welcome the head of sustainability, the lead sustainability for steel supplier SSAB, who's focusing on how to incorporate sustainability into the heart of the business model of the entire organization. Thomas Hodenfeld, the VP of Sustainable Business from SSAB.
Good afternoon.
So a very warm welcome. Thanks again to everyone for taking the time on such an important topic, and I think such an inspiring one too. I want to move first, get a sense of the strategic priorities for each of you when we're talking about sustainable production. And I'm going to start with Hans on the Polestar Zero, which, as I mentioned, intended to be fully carbon zero across life cycle by 2030. Can you give us a sense of how you're approaching this pretty monumental task, and particularly when addressing issues that perhaps are not so solvable today? Hans.
Sure. First, I like just to repeat what you said. I think today I'm heading a program we call Polestar Zero Project, a truly climate neutral car by 2030 and no offsetting. That makes me smile and make me happy every single day. And by having a mission or an important task that you so engage in, that I really hope that we can get many people with the same feeling and same passion. And that is one of our core approaches, to get support from people who believe in this, and there are many. So that thing. About the approach, if I could mention three things in the beginning: collaboration. We really want to collaborate with people that are passionate about making these things happen. And secondly, we are not talking about reducing emission or minimize them. We talk about eliminating. That's another approach. Eliminate the source we found. And the third one is not proposal how they could be changed in the future. Action. So collaborate, eliminate, and do it now with action. That's our main focus on our approach.
Great, and we're going to go into some of the details on those as well. And it is indeed a very exciting and inspiring project, and very ambitious. Owen, you joined last year to head up the circular economy business. I'd like to just get a sense again of the real core objectives and approach in circular economy for Volvo Cars.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to be with you here today, and alongside such experts in the field as well. So, I joined last year, and I am currently focusing on firstly ensuring that we hit our 2025 targets. So we have some very ambitious targets for saving 1 billion SEK or generating 1 billion SEK. We have to balance those things together annually by 2025. Then we are hitting recycled content of 25% for plastics and steel, and 40% with aluminium in the vehicle. So that is number one. And number two is focusing on 2040. And we have this incredibly ambitious target to be a circular business. And I guess that one of the things about being a leader in this space is that we don't have a blueprint to work from. And so my job at the moment is focusing on how to develop the plan, a concrete plan that we can work towards, making circular business something that the whole organization can understand and apply. And not only can we have a positive impact on planetary boundaries, but we also can make it business sensible as well. So we're very much in the thick of this at the moment, and we plan to have that delivered by the end of the year.
Okay, great. Again, a sense of what the key kind of targets there, and very ambitious ones at that too. Thomas, I want to turn to you, SSAB. You, as a company with steel and materials, are in effect, perhaps one of the key suppliers and partners in helping companies like Volvo and Polestar achieve these goals. Can you talk about your strategic goals from a product and manufacturing point of view?
Happy to, and it's relatively straightforward. We've made a very clear commitment that we are going to eliminate our CO2 emissions and put a truly fossil-free steel product on the market in 2026 on commercial terms as a commercial product. And we are also in the process of accelerating our own transition as a company. And our plan right now is to be largely fossil-free as a company in 2030. And that's something that it takes commitment, but also makes me quite happy. And I'm very proud to be able to say that I think that we are on the forefront of the development here, and we're quite excited to be working both with Volvo and Polestar on this journey.
Yes, and I think I said it up front, and Hans reiterated it, and you hit it there. This sense of mission and purpose, I think, is such an important part of driving agile organizations, and this aspect for sustainability, putting it at the heart of it, is key. Hans, you've previously talked about Polestar 0 as a moonshot, and this is as you said, eliminating emissions, not just offsetting them. But of course, that's also part of that. There are also wider targets across Polestar, I'm sure somewhat aligned and different to Volvo's. Can you talk a little bit about how the Polestar 0 is treated, perhaps separately or distinctly from the wider sustainability targets of Polestar?
Yeah. like most of the days, I parked the car outside the door today, walked into the beautiful entrance we have here in the headquarters, and on the side on the white wall it say, "We are an electric performance brand determined to improve the society we live in." And of course, CO2 is not the only sustainability target we have. So we have in the company today a very good way of handling many topics like human rights or clean water, whatever you bring up in a sustainability goals, etc. We are very engaged in many of these today as a company. So I'm very happy that we have that situation today. Polestar Zero project is like, if I simplify just for a moment, is acting on one of these, number 13, climate action. And of course, it works together. We have this moonshot goal for this particular reason, and we have many, many other activities in the company. So we have to separate the two are not, they are separated programs, but they work perfectly in harmony. Yes.
And I think we'll come on to it, but I know that perhaps what's specific on the Polestar Zero is that it is a program, a very specific program with really strong actions and planning, as you alluded to earlier.
Yes, absolutely, indeed.
Starting with you, maybe, Owen. Well, for the panel, but I might start with you first on this, Owen. We're living, as I mentioned up front, through, as we talk about inflation, supply chain crisis, rising costs, and I indicated up front about perhaps where sustainability and circular economy fits in that picture. On the one hand, it seems a tough ask if we have to pay more for anything right now. But on the other hand, of course, this is part of securing the future. How does that impact your strategy right now? Is this a business case to make circular economy stronger, or if, in fact, it's some compromises along the way there?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and the timing is live, because I think when I joined last year, the topic of recycled content seemed to be quite complicated, and the long-term direction was seemingly quite sort of organic, and we were doing a lot, but it was sort of seen as something that we just had to do, and recycled content was the way to get things sorted from a circular perspective. But now that's changed, and now with the price hikes for materials, for batteries, but also other materials in the vehicle, this is top of the agenda for the senior management team, and we are highly aware that if we are going to be a sustainable business in future, and we want to get access to not only critical raw material, but the best version of the critical raw material, we are going to need to find smart strategies to access raw materials, whether that's from vehicles that we have placed on the market, whether it's old vehicles, whether it's used batteries. And so all of this has suddenly become a real priority across the organization. And so for me, I feel like this is a really prime time to start saying how circular economy can really make a difference here. Secondary raw material is a highly beneficial source of resources because of the benefit from a carbon perspective in most cases, but also the other planetary benefits because you're not having to extract virgin material. But it is also not the only type of material. And we know that for many of the grades that we need, we're still going to need virgin material, and in some cases very high quantities of virgin material. And so we still need to push the virgin high climate neutral sources of material. But secondary raw material has now become a credible alternative to that. And so for me, that is really helpful, especially when we are talking about how we can engage with our vehicles through life and looking at component remanufacturing and ways in which we can extend the life of vehicles. So for me, I think this is an incredibly positive issue that's come up. I can see that there are problems in sourcing material, which is incredibly problematic, but fortunately that's not on my plate, and my plate is to try and make circular economy fly. And so yeah, I see that this is helpful for the narrative around circularity.
Yes, and as you kind of alluded when you talked about the goals, I think in terms of the 1 billion Swedish krona target, I mean that's a mix of savings but also generating revenue through this, right? So again, it's a business model as well as
Yeah, and we just before we move on, maybe I'm sure you want to jump to Thomas, but we do have sort of 3 areas that we focus on when it comes to circularity, and each one of those relates to sort of cost savings and profit making. One is sort of the services that we provide at a product level, where we look at different ways that vehicles can be circulated within our ecosystem for longer. So we have Care by Volvo and M, and we're looking at ways that we can better utilize those. But then I did touch on component value retention, where we're looking at remanufacturing and looking at how those components that are in products can be reutilized through reuse models, refurb, repair, remanufacture, so that we don't have to go and buy new products all the time. But then at the last point is material value retention, where we are looking at how the materials that are placed in products and the waste that's generated in our value chain can be utilized so we don't devalue it. And one of the things that I think everyone in the automotive space and interested in sustainability is incredibly aware of is the fact that we say that we have a 95+% recycling rate, but that's weight based. That's not value based. There's a huge value degradation in that. So that for us is incredibly important.
Indeed, and I do, Thomas, I'm interested to get your perspective here as well. Again, to the point around, the complicated picture on material costs, on inflation, etc. How is that impacting both the narrative and the approach, if you like, for SSAB to achieve the targets that you've set out earlier?
I think what this situation has brought about is that people focus and highlight how complicated our supply and value chains actually are today, and I think that this will also bring about a focus of having maybe shorter delivery chains, having your suppliers closer to you, and increase the visibility, which I think is important. I think it will certainly drive the development in the right direction. I was happy that Owen said that you were eager to hand over to me here, because I think that we need, as Owen rightly said, we need both in the future. We need recycled materials and we need virgin materials, and we're committed to both. And like I said, our big mission is making sure that we can provide virgin materials without fossil emissions, which is something that we're quite proud of. But I also think it's important to distinguish between different materials and also, like Owen said, focus on the entire life cycle here. When it comes to plastics, for example, there are more recycled plastics than there is demand for right now. We need to increase and make sure that we're not building mountains of recycled plastics. In the case of steel, we have an extremely efficient both recycling program and take back solutions and so on, making sure that we're not losing any value. But above all, when you recycle steel, when you melt it down again, you really break the material down to atomic level and you create a virgin material also from recycled content. There is no devaluation there. And I think that's one of the biggest benefit that we can still explore more together. So I think, again, it is about choosing the right material, using it in the right way, and focus both on having recycled content and recyclable content at the end of life, which I think is equally important here.
And this idea, I think, of designing programs and products upfront for recyclability and reuse is of course increasingly important here. Hans, turning to you again, I can certainly see, as Owen alluded to, why this issue supports the narrative, makes it stronger. Unfortunately for you, I think the complications of sourcing and getting this material is on your plate because you're heading the program. So perhaps some of the complications will be things you have to manage. How do you see this?
Well, I said, first of all, we have to look like 10 years ahead. So and the way we really treat materials is that we go to the very first, where everything starts, in a petroleum cracker or in a mining for metals or etc. So instead of looking really how the situation is here and now, we really have to look at where do we need to be and look at the problems that we have in front of us. So if I come back to like the eliminating is really about looking at the current processes in all chain, in the beginning or in the middle. Is there any CO2 emissions in this area? Can it be replaced with today's technology? then it's easy. Or if it really needed research to find the future, because if everyone talk about the sustainable future, someone have to find a solution how to make things that we are so used to, which have greenhouse gas penalties, in a different way. I mean, we are really happy about the important innovation and inventions that have happened in the past, but the greenhouse gas comes like a penalty with it, and we have to find solutions. So we don't want to pick on anyone. We want to address them, and not, I heard someone, it doesn't really matter, but in all discussions, we don't push for green solutions. We work with actually finding how we can do with it. Don't pick on anyone. Don't put requirement on your suppliers. Work with the solutions in every step. And maybe this is not the correct answer to your question, but look at the long-term solution and work with the problems we need to solve. That's our focus.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Just turning to that view. I mean, we talked about looking 10 years out, obviously 2030. Although, you know, it in some ways, as we can say, it might seem a far long way away, but I think in a vehicle program and development phase, it's a bit closer than anyone would think, right? I mean, it's basically a model cycle. So can you, as I talked about earlier, this is a real program and very, very kind of, I think articulated. And yet it has so many unknowns, clearly. I mean, as you just pointed out, there are things that, so just maybe it'd be really interesting to get a few examples of how you manage some of these unknowns. I'm not saying you have the answers yet, but clearly that is part of how you manage that.
So I'm not sure if everyone liked it, but I do compare it with the Gemini and the Apollo programs in the 60s in US. It is extremely complex. We know exactly what we want to achieve, but we don't know in the beginning, like in the early 60s in US, they didn't know exactly how it would happen, but they really knew that it must happen and they wanted it to happen. So that's what we do. And I've been in the car industry my whole life, and we have the car industry, including suppliers as well, have really good knowledge in programming, in running programs. So the only thing we can do is to make a proper time plan. We have an MS project time plan like any program. The only difference is 10 years instead of 36 months or similar. It's 10 years schedule. And we boil this down. I can work backwards and realize that I'm in a really hurry, because it takes about 36 months to make a proper car development, like the car behind me. That means that if we have production start week 22, 2030, that is 2 weeks from now, plus 8 years. So 27, we need to start a proper car program. And it takes about 2 years in an architecture study. Should it be a convertible? Should it be an SUV? Should it be based on aluminum, steel? Or what business model is available at that time? We need to start around 2 years early. That's 25. So hang on. These unknowns I have talked about now and could continue to talk about, it's not a 10-year research period we have. We have 5 years, 2 years is gone. We have 3 years now to solve, fundamentally new ways, just like Thomas expressed one. But there are many, many more ways we have to solve in 3 years. And our approach in timing is that, think about the TV chef. If he's about to make a good meal in TV, he normally have like bowls in front of him before he starts to cook. That's the ingredients. And my thinking is that, not my, but our thinking is like in 25, we will put the bowls available for this cook, chef. And if we don't have them, they are not available for architecture study. That's how we treat this time period we have.
Yeah, and that. So obviously, highly compressed in that way, given the unknowns. You're obviously then, as you alluded to, still very much in that research phase, but needing to take quick actions. If we turn to, and I'll turn to you, Thomas, on this, whether this is in relation to something like Polestar 0 or obviously beyond that as well. Hans just alluded to determining, okay, what is the material mix of the body going to be? Are we going aluminium? Are we going green or something else? How do you see this mix developing now over the decade in this relatively short space of time? Obviously, we're seeing more of a mix coming into the sector, but for you and SSAB in the sector, what do you see as the way to approach this to achieve some targets that you've set out too by 2030?
Well, admittedly, maybe I'm not the most neutral person to ask about material development here, but as a relatively neutral observation, we can see that applications that have in the past been using a lot of aluminum, like battery boxes, for example, are now increasingly moving to steel, and I think that is for three reasons. It is about sustainability, it is about recyclability, it is about cost, but also performance. I mean, we can make steel grades today that have weight performance ratios compared to aluminum, for example. And I really think that it is the recyclability that is driving here. I can imagine that carbon fiber, for example, is used in vehicles sometimes today to save weight, but we have to admit that is something that we cannot recycle at all. So I see a relatively bright future for steel, especially when you can make sure that it's both recycled, recyclable, and made from virgin materials without causing CO2 emissions.
Oh, and I'd be interested in your perspective there. I mean, I think we see some mixed strategies from Volvo in materials. We wrote earlier this year about plans for aluminium, gigacasting, etc. So, but I don't think it's that was for a rear body. That's not for everything. So obviously there's a mixed picture. On the back of what Thomas said, particularly with that recyclability in mind, how are you looking at this?
Yeah, and it's a really complex challenge. So I joined the automotive sector last year, and I'm realizing that the scale of complexity is incredible. And so where we are looking at rationalization. One of the principles for circularity that we have is rationalization, because I think that, like you've alluded to, the recyclability is often hindered by the choices that are made in joining technologies and things, and in some cases, the material selection. And so we have to be quite critical with ourselves that if we're choosing materials that are not recyclable, we need to have an incredibly good reason why that is. And then if we're joining the things that are highly recyclable to things that are not recyclable in a way that means that they can't be disassembled, there's a huge question mark there as well, isn't there? So we have this whole dynamic of challenges around material choices, joining choices, and then vehicle production and disassembly taken into consideration at that stage. When it comes to megacasting, I think this sounds like an amazing opportunity to rationalize the way that we produce parts of the vehicle. And as I understand it, we've saved thousands of components by doing this, and so that's firstly very good. Then when we look at what that means for recyclability, it does seem to be that the opportunities for closing loops here at a material level is very good, and could be potentially closed loop with very little loss of in the recycling process. But what I would also say is that I think that we are also starting to beg the question: what happens if we were to reuse some of these megacast structures? And Thomas has already indicated that the battery cell structure is one that is being considered from different materials choices. But I also asked the question, what's going to be the future point of obsolescence for vehicles, and how can we design vehicles in such a way that large, heavy, intensive components, energy intensive and carbon intensive components, can be reused? And so we're looking at this at the moment and finding out if there's a possibility for that. So yes, does look like megacast can be put into a closed loop cycle. Does may ask some really fundamental questions about how we engage with vehicles at the end of life, because if we're putting them onto the market and we're just saying farewell and good luck to you dismantlers and recyclers, then we're not going to have a chance to do that. But then on the other side of it, how can we also look at reusing some of those structures and components to extend their life, so a component life, even if it's not going to be in the same vehicle? And that's a really challenging one for a company that tries to be ahead of the times with new designs, new platforms, and new processes. But it has to be taken into question. We're not really living in a time where we can't bring all of these things, put them on the table. I think Hans has hit the nail on the head. If we're going to be a circular business in 2040, we have to do things today, because the vehicles that we're designing today are going to be on the market in 2040. And so we've already designed things in that are going to cause some complexity to our 2040 position. Any choices that we make now need to be aligned with that future scenario. We need to be putting time and effort into the strategies to deal with the problems that we've put onto the market.
That's an interesting and fascinating challenge ahead, but it's quite inspiring too. Hans, coming back to you on this, if I understood your point earlier, I wouldn't say or ask you to declare at this moment what exactly is the material mix that the Polestar 0 will have in 2030. It doesn't sound like that's the point that you're at yet. You're still feeling it, but looking to that short timeline, what are some? Is this an area now you're working specifically with partners like SSAB to determine? Because clearly things like steel have advantages, but it's hard to think about how you can totally eliminate emissions in this short space of time. So I'm just interested to hear a sense of where you're at with this right now.
Yeah, and I think I partly answered that. But like I said, we are really exploring and try to find the materials that have the possibility to go completely without greenhouse gases. But if you look even on our history already, we are a young company. We have made Polestar 1 carbon fiber. We have the steel-made car behind us. We are making future cars very much on aluminum. So the thing we have to be very transparent and see, what will the future materials be? And just like Thomas say, he's working in the steel area, and they are on the way in a very good way. So we have to look at all materials, copper, plastic, adhesives. We cannot bond things together if you don't have a proper adhesive. So there are no simple answer, Chris, to that question. And I would love to answer it. Hopefully we have a much better answer 2025. How big chance is it that we have any adhesive, or if aluminum will be there, or if Thomas will be successful, etc. But that's what we try to say. Look around yourself. Look in your little room or studio you have. There are no commercialized product today made without greenhouse gases. So the answer, which material will be there, we will try to find out. That's the honest answer. And we really want to work with companies who are very transparent and honest. If they want to be part of the future, all want to be, of course. Are they transparent enough to realize and express what problems is in their business, etc., or in their business model? So that's what we want. Then we can. So if you have this session 2025, we will be much closer to what we call it evidence 25. That we have enough evidence it could be made in steel, or aluminum, or plastic. Long answer.
Yeah, no, but it's the honest answer, and I think your point there in effect, which is that all options are on the table because they're all developing, and the partners that you work with, have the opportunity to engage with you to come up with these solutions, which is in of itself quite an exciting approach right now.
And if I could add, and we don't really have the luxury to pick one or two materials now, because if we fail then we definitely not having time enough to have alternatives ready. So we need to explore widely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and maybe I'll turn to you first on this, Owen. We're talking about material mix, but I think dematerialization is also a part of these approaches as well. Reducing, the part that doesn't need to be built must be in and of itself the most sustainable, right? So, but at the same time, you are Polestar, Volvo, and many others are also premium brands, premium ambitions, and this is perhaps a balance to strike in design and engineering. So maybe starting with you, and you can talk a little bit about what the dematerialization approach might look like.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I told you about my dematerialization principle or whether you've just come up with it yourself. But yeah, agree. It's good. It's a good way of thinking about things, and we look at that in two ways really. One is about reducing the total weight of material. I'm cautious about using lightweighting, as anyone in the automotive sector is aware is a sensitive, challenging area. But then the other part is about finding ways to displace the need for other products or components. And so I'll say that, Volvo do put lots of SUVs on the market, and that's something that we're as a circular economy expert in the sustainability arena, is something that we're grappling with at the moment. So I'll put that on the table, just out there. Don't have an answer for that right now. But the other side of it, so we need to tackle that. We need to make the large vehicles lighter, in my opinion. The other side of it is about dematerialization through the business models. And so we are very active in mobility solutions with M, specifically, and M is providing mobility in urban environments at the moment, and they're expanding. And what they provide is a solution that means people don't need to own vehicles. And so for us, that is a really it's a difficult sell, that we are trying to promote a solution that takes vehicles off the market. But we're saying that one M vehicle displaces the need for 9 other vehicles. So from a dematerialization perspective, that is highly effective. I would also say that an organization that is putting heavy, expensive products onto the market in an environment where we are going through volatility and the amount of expenditure people have got, but also with a growing population of people that are living in more urban environments and may choose to buy products differently. I was hearing that the other day that sort of the new consumers joining the market are considering more about how their monthly salary looks rather than their overall asset wealth. And so people are thinking on the monthly spend through subscriptions and stuff. So how can we then provide them mobility, number one, but how can we provide them other services as well that may be intangible? So that's something that we have to be really smart about. And it means that we have to consider what options there would be for different digital solutions or different mobility platforms and things. And so from our perspective, we have to deal with both sides. One, dematerialization by providing a revenue-based solution, generating revenue with less resources. And the other side is where we are putting products on the market, how can we make those lighter? I don't have an answer for you yet, but it will certainly be one of the things that sits very high up the top when we have a circular economy plan for 2040. And I look forward to coming back and, like you say, Hans, in 2025, we'll have all the answers, right?
We'll be here ready to hear them.
We'll have the evidence.
Yeah. I think it's, but we've at this event and in our conversations, we've, in general, in the automotive industry, there's some shifts from volume to value, and that's a key strategy for many OEMs. And I think this aspect of, perhaps from a luxury premium brand point of view, dematerializing, where luxury and where the services are that really offer value, maybe less to some of the extras that we would have previously associated with certain vehicles and more on other factors. Hans, I think we're interested to hear perspectives from you on this as well, from dematerialization.
Yeah, if I could steer it to an area I'm really eager to talk about, is that I fully agree with the less material, then it doesn't have to be made, so that's very good. But if we think about our lives, what do we like in today's society? We like the smartphone. We like Internet of Things. There is one area that increasing all the time: PCBs and other electronics. Year by year, you probably have the cell phone in your pocket there. And electronics is one of the highest, if not the highest, CO2 burden per kilogram produced. So this is an area where we are not decreasing currently in any business, not automotive either. We just increase electronics like most products do. And it's an area we really have to focus on to get this down in CO2 values. And we also, from a broader perspective, talk about the digitalization is a solution in many cases. That means even more electronics. We really have to look at this field I really like to mention that today. That's an area we talk maybe in terms of hours of written language about steel, aluminum, copper. But what about our addiction to electronics today, which is growing yearly?
Yeah, and I know from speaking with the Polestar design team that that they're some creating more sanctuary space and certain minimalism, and while still achieving UX is a key point, a key objective, to find this balance of minimalism but also the services. So it is a great point. It doesn't all lie in software and electronics, because that gets us into trouble too.
I think we should have it in the future, but we really have to work on this very hard, on hardware, etc. How is it made? Where and how, and all chemical processes between. It's very important area.
No question. Thomas, just to bring you into this too, I think, is what it does suggest to me, to the point, to Hans' point around working with partners. Whilst as a business, the objective to sell more steel would be kind of obvious, but actually, is it more now for you about working in an earlier phase with your partners to find service solution and the right mix, etc., and not just more, so to speak?
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think in fact our target is to sell less steel per vehicle, making sure that our customers use as high strength steels as possible, use the material wisely. That's where we like to work with our customers to make sure that we get the most out of the materials. One of our key fortes is developing what we call advanced high strength steels to make sure that we can achieve safe, reliable cars with as little material as possible, which also means that we then, of course, also extend range and that kind of thing in electrical vehicles. It's really an area where I think that we haven't really seen the end yet. We can still do a lot more together.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. And we have a few minutes left. I'll probably borrow a few minutes more just to cover a few points, but obviously we're coming closer to the end. I did want to touch upon, I know clearly partnerships, you've all emphasized this, and it's really important, but I would just be interested to hear a bit more about perhaps some new approaches for that. I'll start with you, Hans, because I think if you go on the Polestar Zero website, there's a really clear open call for engagement. So can you talk a bit about whom you're working with, or the types of companies you're working with or looking to work with, and perhaps if there's a new model for that in this project?
Well, I think we really need to look at how we work with different companies in a new way, because this cascading, waterfalling, that I talk to one person, that person talk to another one, and it's on and on. It's not the way that this change could happen in the time frame we have in the future, or for the correct future. It will not happen. So we need to find new ways. And our approach is that we want companies, we tell them about our mission and vision, and want people to realize or think about what will their future business be. Because if they share our vision, we want them to contact us. Because if we collaborate in a team which share the same values, so we're not pushing or on this mission to someone else. Instead of ask yourself, what do you want to be in the future, and how soon, etc. How much are you willing to add from research on this? That's the way we want to collaborate. And it doesn't matter if you're tier 1 or tier 2 or 3 or 4. If you're part of the business and have this vision, that's the way of working, instead of going just the waterfall way down. That's what we believe in, really.
Absolutely. And Owen, for you, is this kind of pointing to new forms of partnership and collaboration, new ways of contracting with suppliers to take that longer term view? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Hans there has said, that I just think you succinctly put it in a beautiful way, and I would agree. So we would love to have those conversations as well, and I know that we do collaborate with Polestar, and we probably need to do more, but we are also looking for those innovative ideas that that are credible that we can actually get across the line as well. So I second that. The other thing, yes, different types of partnerships. This semiconductor issue and the cost of raw materials has really raised awareness to the need to think about the value chain holistically. One of the things that I did when I first joined was to carry out a cross-value chain assessment of the resource consumption that we had. And I think it was eye-opening to people that the scale of waste generated across the value chain is so significant. And so not only do we need to collaborate on innovation and new product development and new component development, we need all of that. But we also need to support our value chain partners to actually increase the work that they're doing on sustainability-related issues. And we, as the OEM in the value chain, although we have some big partners like Bosch and those that are bigger than us, in many cases we're the biggest player in the value chain, and therefore we need to sort of show leadership on topics like carbon, but beyond carbon as well. We need to start talking about other planetary boundaries. And so not only do we need to find different value chain partners to collaborate with beyond tier one, we need to talk about different things, and we also need to act responsibly about engaging on topics that are highly unknown and we don't have the data for. Fortunately, we have good data on electronics, and Hans is absolutely right. Electronics is hellish when it comes to the carbon factor. But what about when we talk about the water impact in the electronics value chain? It's vast. And then we talk about other environmental implications there as well. So I think, yes, collaboration to proactively improve the value chain and sustainability of products, critical, and collaboration with value chain partners to pull them up to our standards is vital as well. And if I might just finally add, we need to start looking downstream as well. So we're so good at putting products onto the market and really good at keeping those products in life. And the independent aftermarket is excellent at keeping components flowing. But we're really not very good at dealing with the end of life of vehicles. And we do need to find a way to better manage that. And that's something that I have as a bit of a bugbear. And so anyone in that space that could, I'm calling for action there. Anyone that can reach out to me and talk to me about innovative things in that space, robotics or whatever, I'll be really keen to open that dialogue. But yeah, hopefully covered the question about collaboration.
Well, we'd certainly be happy to help coordinate anyone who's trying to reach Owen who doesn't do so on the platform, or any of our panelists for that matter, because I'm sure this is a key call to action across our global audience. Thomas, just maybe a last question for you on this side in terms of, from the supplier point of view, how are you looking and hoping to work differently with your OEM partners, or indeed perhaps your own suppliers in those cases? Is it, as I mentioned earlier, is it earlier in the value chain or in the development cycle, co-creation, for example? What would be your call to action there, if you like, to your partners?
To be fair, I think both Hans and Owen has talked about this already, that the closer we can work together, and primarily the earlier we can work together, the more we can achieve. I think it is really about being clear on what kind of goals we have, and then the tighter we can work together, the earlier in the development stage of a product or a supply chain, the more we can achieve. I think it is as simple as that. We are all experts in our own respective fields, and by bringing that expertise together, we can really achieve a lot. And I think that we can see also that combining the values we've been talking about, certainly carbon footprint, but also other areas of the supply chain, like Hans talked about, digging into the details here. What can we change together? What can we achieve? What are our common targets? So running the risk of sounding very boring, I'd say more of the above.
Yeah, it's not boring. I think gives our audience certainly more to think about. Hans, I'm going to give you the last word here. Last message to any of your suppliers or potential partners. Why should they? Well, if they haven't already considered yet, why should they consider joining you on this path, and what do they need to do to get to join you and help you get there, help you reach the moon?
Well, first we're gonna make it to the moon and safely back. We're gonna be successful. I'm so convinced. But I want everyone who's in the business and management team, or bring it up to the management team, what will your business look like when greenhouse gas emission is not part of the deal any longer? We all will be there. What will your business look like? And isn't it time to act on this now instead of waiting 10 years to act?
And I think that's a fantastic point to end it on. Don't wait, act now. And just to reiterate to our audience, if you want to act now or get in touch now, it's a great opportunity to do so. That's why we're broadcasting this, and people who are watching this on demand later on and you're not on the platform, please get in touch. We're obviously happy to help facilitate this. But I want to thank our panelists, because this has been one of my favorite discussions so far. It's a matter close to my heart too. Hans Persson, Owen Griffiths, Thomas Hohenfeld. It's been really great talking about this with you. We look forward to talking about it up to and including 2025 when all the answers are there. But we'll do our best to help you get them, help you find them along the way. Thanks again. And we look forward to that. And to our audience, stick around, because we'll be right back with more. In fact, we have a session starting in 10 minutes on recycling materials for batteries. So good follow on from this indeed. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you,
Chris.